the big building blocks that need to be in place to pass on faith to the next generation. This is based on our experience, our reading. Just skip forward, we're going to get textual blocks. We'll go through those. This stuff is all in your handout. We've already talked about that pretty well. So we'll go through these two slides, actually. This is George Barner, who wrote his Raising Spiritual Champions book just recently, based on the book he wrote 20 years ago called Raising, what was called Spiritual Champions. This is his book, Mark 2. What he says is a person's worldview starts developing in the 15-month to 18-month age range and is largely in place by the age of 13. That's a prime time for window of opportunity for discipleship and passing on faith to our children. He says only 4% of adults has what he calls a biblical worldview. What was that worldview? We'll go through quickly. That absolute moral truth exists, that the Bible is totally accurate in all the principles it teaches, that Satan is a real being or force, that a person cannot earn their way into heaven by trying to be good or do good works, that Jesus Christ lived a sinless life, and that God is the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of the world who still rules the universe today. That's how he defines a biblical worldview.
And they're the things that we talked about in the car going to school.
Yeah.
And when you would do a 6-hour...
Age of the earth, those sorts of things.
And when you do a trip out to Coonabarabran, they're the type of things we talk to with our kids. Perfect time.
So here are the 7 ways that we've found, and from research and reading, and you might say, well, yeah, I agree or disagree, it's okay, but here's some ideas to think about. Number 1, we're going to pass on a lifelong faith, good mentoring. Good parenting, we'll come to that shortly, but good mentoring. If we can put one extra mentor in the life of our children that knows them by name, that speaks into their life, it will go better for them spiritually.
And sometimes the most unlikely people can be the absolute best mentors. So if he happens to be out there and watching by random. I have a friend called Chris, and Chris I've known since I was 19. He's awesome. He's had a very interesting life, and he will tell you that himself. But my goodness, he was so honest and so real with our kids about what to do and what not to do. And I know some people would go, oh, and I'd go, no, he's amazing. What he gave our kids was just incredible. He stopped our kids from getting into so much trouble because he was really honest about his own past. I did this, and look, guys, you really don't want to do what I did. And so we're very thankful to Chris.
Yeah. And to say if we put 5 mentors in their life, a sticky web of 5 mentors, it goes even better for them. That's where I like today seeing the Pathfinder leaders and the adventurer leaders and the pastor and the youth pastor and the Sabbath school leaders, or whatever you call it out there, and you guys have intentional community you create between Sabbath school or between church and your second program. That community is what we call the ad hoc mentoring, where they're rubbing shoulders with different people of faith, and that helps faith to be passed on. Yeah, because Jesus works for that person, Jesus works for that person, and that person takes Jesus seriously. It might work for me too.
Absolutely. And the other thing is what you've just said, but you want your kids to have safe people so that when you are the world's most evil, nasty, horrible person, and your kids might be using nastier names.
Especially when they get teenage years, they find their parents are awkward.
Yeah, and I hate you, Mum, or I hate you, Dad. They've got a friend of yours or a friend of theirs that they can go to and say, my mum's a cow. She wouldn't let me. And the friend can go, I can see why you might think about that. What did Mum really want? And then they have the discussion and your child comes back. Having that person that your child can go to and be safe with when they're terribly upset is important. We had lots of people that our kids could do that with.
Yeah. And that ad hoc community, that's where the church comes into its own. Pathfinders and adventurers come into their own. Number 2 is, and again for pathfinders and adventurers, the power of memory events. For the church, that's things like Pathfinder Camporee, which all our kids went to, or it's Adventure Camporee, which is coming up next year on the calendar.
Summer camps.
Yep.
Big camp.
all of those things, the big events, even the high days here at church. And then there's things like for families, it's the birthdays, it's the round Australia trip or the holidays or the UK trip or whatever you do, things together that give kids anchor points on which to hang their faith. And those high days help do that.
You know, I'm going to be very honest here, we might still have a mortgage and it might be just a tad larger than we'd like. You know, it's actually not a bad one. But, do you know, we took our kids to Fiji with my entire family a number of times. I lost count of how many times. We did a side trip to New Zealand on one occasion. What else? Our kids went to summer camp every year.
Camporees.
We've done camporees, all those types of things. And although I was on temp contracts, which meant I didn't get holiday pay, you know. But we prioritised that. And even when we went to England this year, we kind of might have maybe paid for a good portion of our kids' tickets.
For the adventure together.
I don't regret that. You know, at any point in time, something could happen to us. You know, I've got the BRCA2 gene and I've had surgery and I should be okay. But we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Like I lost my mum when she was 40. She was diagnosed with breast cancer when I was 10 and she was 34. So we've got that there. But you know what? I've got those memories and I have left my kids with really good family memories of us having a great time together based around, you know, our love of God.
Yep.
And so I'm really happy to still have that mortgage because of what I've got to do with my kids and the memory events our kids got to do.
Yeah, number 3, quality time. Children spell love as Time. And in the busy world we find ourselves in, finding time to stop and date your daughter, date your son, spend time with them is powerful, powerful, powerful when it comes to passing on faith. I had regular time when I took my son or my daughter, and Lisa did too, on a date to do things together, one-on-one time. I would take the long route, especially home, so that the discussion that occurred after the event was powerful and life-forming. So date your kids regularly. Find the time to invest in them while they are young.
So if both parents are involved in Pathfinders, that's really good. I used to do the hall meetings. Daron did the camps. So we both had that time. So Daron, when he'd set up his calendar 18 months in advance, we generally knew when, in North New South Wales, because that's where we were at the time, when the expeditions, etc. were. So Daron would block out that time and he would do it. Because that really, like Madison was so important. My dad came and he helped me, and I know that I matter to my dad because he took the time off work and he did this with me. And that gives your kids the sense of importance, of belonging.
The power of showing up.
Yeah, it's the power of showing up, but it gives them that sense of security. And if you don't have parents who show up, you really don't have a sense of security. And I see it with kids I work where mum or dad can't turn up. And it's really sad, but we've got other kids, and they're often the kids you wouldn't expect it. You know, ring up, hey, it's that time of year again. I've got, you know, our individual education plan meeting is due. And Dad goes, right, when have you got it available? I said, I've got any time next week. I will be there at 10:30 next Monday. And he'll be there because he shows up for his kids. I've got other parents who won't answer the phone. So I know it might be tough for some of us. We've got to, you know, schedule things around work, but really try and show up for your kids because it's the one thing that sets them on the road to being a secure, successful adult.
Number 4 is the power of godly parents. Children, according to research, are more likely than not to adopt the faith of their parents. While there are no guarantees, they're likely to be as godly as their parents are godly. But it's not what they see on Saturday, what they see during the week with my marriage, with my downtime when I've had a really hard day at the office. I go home to talk to the chooks and feel like throwing it in. All those times. How does God work in those times? Kids need to see authentic parents who trust God in the ups and the downs and are honest about it. And that's more likely to pass on faith than anything else. So godly parents is huge in passing on faith. Number 5, stories and God encounters. I've already talked about the other seminar about reading the power of reading to our children on a regular basis. My mum took on my Bible story by Uncle Arthur, 10 volumes, and she read to us kids every night. That was her habit. She would have us read aloud to her as well.
Well, I started with kids' Bibles when Andrew was about 6 months old, and we had simple stories with like one line per page. And then as he got older, and then Madison came along 4 years later, I would change the Bible, kids' Bible, to the next version up that was a little bit more complicated, that told the main stories from that chapter in the Bible. And the kids loved it. We would read that. We'd read all kinds of different books, but we always finished with a Bible story and prayer. But
and Luca knows that right now with Papa reading stories and Lily, if it gets to the second last page, he closes the book and pulls out the next one because he knows he can delay bedtime by not quite finishing that story and starting the next one. So we go through to the second last page, he'll come and close the book and give us the next one. So he gets 3 or 4 stories.
We do read the last page. But the other thing is, if you have a story about how your family found God or how you found God, tell that story over and over again.
Or why you are a Christian, why you're an Adventist Christian.
So my great-grandfather back in the late 1890s became a Sabbath keeper, not an Adventist, but a Sabbath keeper because he found a little brochure on the ground.
Written by a Jewish rabbi.
Written by a Jewish rabbi that said there's, I think it was £100 or £50 to the person who could prove that Sunday was the day to worship on. And my family...
Being a Pasco, he wanted the money.
There was 14 kids in the family.
Yeah.
He had 13
but still,
siblings.
he was going to get that money by whatever it took.
It meant a lot when you had a family that was that large. But, the family then spent the next 3 years reading the Bible over and over and over again. And so my great-grandfather, William Henry Pascoe, he then decided that he was going to keep the Sabbath, and the rest of the family came along too. And there's lots of Pascoe pastors, except they didn't have a lot of men in the last generation. We're all girls. And so that's the story. And when you talk about that, it becomes part of your children's DNA. My
Identity,
family did this. And so, I'm an Adventist, and I'll always be one. But for me, the Sabbath is so important because that is the thing that tied us to God. It was the Sabbath is real. And so, you pass that down to your children. It's really important.
Very spot on. Number 6, strong marriages. Children form their first view of God by their parents and their parents' marriages. So churches running marriage enrichment, investing in marriages, helping couples have the most authentic marriage possible grows security. Now, one thing I say to parents, which I learnt from reading John Gottman, sometimes we're good at this, sometimes we're not so good at this, is the 6-second kiss. Sometime during the day, kiss your spouse for 6 seconds. Now, when you're kissing, that's a long time. But John Gottman says in an age when kids are wondering if their parents are going to get divorced, it passes on security, it tells them that mum and dad love each other, and it grows intimacy in the marriage like nothing else can. So there's your hot tip for the day. A 6-second kiss, scientifically proven to grow strong marriages.
The other thing is, don't be scared to go and see a counsellor.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell the story or are you going to tell it?
We haven't got time, no.
Okay, so when we were in Grafton, we'd had a really stressful church. We'd had Andrew unsettled. We'd built a house. We were okay, but things were stressful. I'd had really bad postnatal depression and wasn't coping. Daron's mum was sick. He wasn't coping. And quite honestly, we could have ended up divorced. I had a really good counsellor who did couples therapy, and I said to Daron, we need to go. We're not going to get a divorce, but we can fix these issues we're having. We just need, we're so stressed, we just need someone else to talk to. I'm not going because they'll judge me, and I'm an Australian male.
Not to believe in psychologists.
I will not be going.
Yeah.
I'm a Pasco, and I'm quite determined. And I said to Daron, that's fine, you don't have to come, but guess what? I'll kick you out. I'll keep the house because I can start teaching and I'll pay, mortgage was $735 a month. I can do this. It's easy. This was 2002. And Daron looks at me and I said, no, I'll get full custody of the kids and I'll keep the car. And I must have rubbed it in because Daron very begrudgingly says, fine, I'll go. Guess what? That was the best thing we ever did. Daron came out of the first session. Our counsellor's name was Marty. She was amazing. She had a Jewish background and she was Anglican and she was just awesome. Daron came out and said, that was really good. And I went, yeah. And we probably had 4 or 5 sessions, and then Daron talked to her on his own because his mum was dying of cancer and it was just really stressful. And guys, it's worth it.
Don't be afraid to
Don't be afraid.
Get help.
Invest in your marriage. And the other thing is, if you find that you've got a regular thing in your family that triggers an argument that stresses your kids, make an agreement to not fight about it till after and to give each other grace.
For us, it was big camps. We'd say we're not going to have an argument till after big camp is finished. We just agreed we're not going to argue. It was high stress. We're just not going to argue because you're trying to run 6 divisions, whatever else, and it was just really high stress. It was
always the Sunday before we had to leave for camp, and I wouldn't want to argue, and Daron would pick at me till he had a fight because we virtually never fight and upset Madison. Would upset both of us. And I said to Daron one year, I don't want to fight with you. And he's still cranky. And so in the end, I gave him an absolute mouthful of it, and he kind of looked at me, and I think he must have realised we were being silly. And the next year, Daron says to me about 6 weeks before camp, I am not arguing with you this year.
Till after big camp.
Till after big camp. And of course, after big camp, we're fine and we don't have an argument. But I suppose we're being real because they're just simple little things that we can do.
It's not about perfect marriages, it's about authentic
It's about being
marriages.
authentic. And then, we had to sit down with Madison and say, sweetie, we are not getting divorced. It's big camp. We haven't been talking properly. Dad's having late nights. Mum's trying to get ready to write reports. This is what's happening.
And I was going to destroy a car. It was always around big camp time.
You did.
I was known in North South Wales for writing cars off. In fact, President Justin Lawman said, when you want to get insurance back on a car or write it off, just give it to Daron for 2 weeks and he'll do it for you.
And if you see our car out in the car park, it's a Hyundai Tucson. The damage on it is not from me. And again, he was stressed. But look, that's enough of that. But okay, next one.
Block 7 finally is the power of serving together. There's really strong evidence around when families serve together, it grows their spirituality and lifelong faith exponentially. When Jesus asked about the greatest commandment, he quotes the Shema, love the Lord your God with your heart, with your soul, with all your strength. And then he says, second is like it, love your neighbour as yourself. So he knows about this way and that way. And research now is saying that families that serve together and do things to serve their community, rock solid faith kicks in for everyone. And it is a strong spiritual growth motivator. So find something to do to serve, whether it's in the soup kitchen or a food bank, or going out. For us, it was Appeal for Missions, or
your family, not mine.
my family. Red Cross collecting and Salvation Army. We did those sorts of things. Dad was always known for giving 50 cents or $1 to the town drunk because he could, to help them buy a pie or whatever else. And our family was brought up with the idea that service was really important.
So our kids, it actually started with Stormco's when they were really little, and Daron and I were the supervising adults.
Because we're running them.
Because we're running them. So the kids were there. Take your kids with you when you can on things like that because they absorb it by osmosis.
Well, we'll go to big camp and say, you guys are not here to run around and just be pastors' kids. You're here to help. And to this
You're
day,
getting free accommodation, you're getting free meals. This is set up and we all put our head in. They got time to do stuff for themselves, but, you just find that they'd come and they'd help and,
Andrew went and got his white card as a teenager so he could be under the canvas helping.
Both kids, we got their white cards and, it was like, you're not allowed on site, it's a construction zone, and both kids had the joy of going, I've got my white card. And so, they learned how to put up the big tents, how to set up for
Andrew
camp.
knows more about canvas now than most people because he learned it from his grandfather.
You start small and then one day, you're sitting in the car and Daron says, someone's been transferred. They've pulled out a big camp. We've got, 3 months to go.
Someone to run kindy.
We need someone to run kindy, or we need someone from primary. And you get the kids in the back seat going, I'll do it. And you go, wow. And so both our kids do that. They wouldn't have done
As
that.
young adults, they both ran the divisions at Big Camp.
Yeah. So you won't have that happening unless you take the kids. You've got to have that habit. It is then, Stormco's, it's big cook-ups in your church kitchen where you freeze food for the local food pantry. That type of stuff where you see you doing. So last year when I had surgery, one of the biggest things that upset me, and I was devastated, was I said to Daron, if we have to get a loan for my surgery, I won't have any money to be able to put into things that I want to in our community. And obviously we did manage to save a bit, and we had some very generous people who helped us out enormously. And the joy is that I can actually now give back to the community, and I'm doing that. But my kids said to me, Mum, giving is so important. They knew how much it was important because they had seen Daron and I always do it. Our kids actually have the same thing. They will just hear about something, and, recently we were talking about something and we said, oh, this has happened, we're talking about a friend and something that they were planning to do. And Andrew goes in and comes out with $100 out of their birthday money and says, Mum, put this in as well. So, when your kids see you doing something regularly and faithfully, they will pick up those habits as well.
Spot on. They're the big 7.
Okay, last thing.
You got another one?
No. We need to say, when you're talking to your kids, we say things like, oh, she's given her heart to Jesus. Little kids may think that you mean that they actually have to cut their heart out and give it to Jesus, which means they die. Our daughter did that. So we had a big conversation about the fact that, no, it just meant that you wanted to be a Jesus follower. She then very quickly said, oh, well, I actually want to be baptised. I just didn't want to die. And we got good. We got it. The other thing is we talk about...
So what's the language you use, saying if you give your heart to Jesus, for them to take it literally, oh, it means I'm going to have to die.
The other one as Adventists we use is we say that the person when they've died is they're sleeping. So our 2.25-year-old grandson, our kids have lost 2 babies. They lost one quite recently. And so Luca thought that he was going to be buried like his little sister had been because she was born sleeping. It caused huge ructions. And in the end, Andrew and Michaela said, Luca's not sleeping, and he is a pretty good sleeper. And I went, I bet he's heard one of us say that Rosie was born sleeping. So they went back to the cemetery and they had a big conversation with him, and he's actually back sleeping.
2.5-year-old, yep.
He's not, he's 2.25.
Yep.
So it's a big difference 3 months at that age. So we just really need to be careful about the euphemisms that we use when we're talking about it, because little kids take it literally and you don't know where they're going in their thought processes. So, sorry, I know that's a...
No, that's good add-on, yep. But in the end, Psalm 78, we will not hide these things. We will tell the next generation about the great things that the Lord has done. And that's what it's all about. And so they're the big 7 that I guess we've come up with that work. While there's no guarantees, I want to do all I can to turn the odds in my favour that my children will grow up to know, love and adore God. And now my grandchildren, so I get to do it all over again. And I could do a seminar on grandparenting, but that's for another day. But thank you. That's about it. I think it's time to finish up.
Yep.
So we might finish, Josh, with a prayer. Yep.
And if you want to ask us any questions afterwards...
We can hang around a bit longer.
Yeah, I don't think we have to rush off, so feel
or
free
you can
to
email
ask us.
me. You know where I am. I work at the office. I'm quite happy to have a chat one-on-one anytime.
And we didn't tell everyone, but we were not perfect parents by any stretch of the imagination.
And it's just be authentic, do your best, invest deeply, invest wisely, and the kids will be okay in the end, in my opinion.